Thank you for joining us today. My name is Nicole Crane. I'm with the Iowa Association of Business and Industry, and joining me today is ABI's public policy team, JD Davis, Vice President of Public Policy, and Brad Hartkoff, Director of Public Policy. We're going to analyze the election results from Tuesday, November 3rd, and we're going to give you an insight as to what happened in the state of Iowa and also a little bit of preview about turnout and some of the congressional races. So JD and Brad, I know you were up late on election night talking and analyzing what's going on across the state. And so there's a lot to dive into. I know we only have a short amount of time, and I know you're going to send out a full content to our key ABI investors, but let's start with turnout. What did we see on election day in the state of Iowa as far as turnout?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nicole, it was an amazing turnout. Voters in Iowa were engaged. Going into the election, we knew that we had 94% of Iowa eligible voters registered, an all-time high. And the Secretary of State reports that over 1.6 million folks voted in the election. So that's a great turnout and great civic involvement.
That is. And so as we looked, it looked like the early voting records also were shattered. Brad, is that kind of what you noticed from your analysis with the previous election cycles?
That's what I noticed as well, Nicole. And I think the Secretary of State had reported that 956,000 Iowans had voted absentee prior to Election Day, which is just outstanding and really great to see that civic involvement as you talked about.
That's great. And that's something I know ABI members for a long time, and the organization itself, we've encouraged employers to talk to their employees about getting out and voting. We've had lots of resources on our iavotes.com website. And so sounds like those resources were put to good use this election cycle. So let's talk a little bit about what happened at the top of the ticket in Iowa, whether that's you want to talk about specifically the president. I know people are reading in the news those top of the ticket races across the country, but what about in Iowa, the U.S. Senate and those congressional races? It seems like we had a lot of competitive ones.
Well, yes, and going into the election, the state of Iowa was listed as a toss-up, both for the presidency and for the U.S. Senate. And it turned out on election day, it was not close, that the state of Iowa was carried handily by both the president and Senator Ernst in her first reelection. So there was something going on in the polling that we saw, because when the Iowans showed up, it was decisive victory for both.
Great. Well, and then as you look at those congressional districts, so there was a competitive primary in the 4th district, which that was held by Congressman Steve King. Brad, what ended up on election day happening there?
I think you look at that, especially the 4th district, when Senator Feenstra beat Congressman King, that really set the effort for and allowed Senator Feenstra to win by approximately 24 points, which is just a landslide. And I think a lot of people expected Feenstra to win. You go over to the 1st district with Ashley Hinson, a pro-jobs champion here in the Iowa legislature. She wins by approximately 3 points. And I think Trump doing well in Iowa really helped her in that district, along with Marinette Miller Meeks in the 2nd district in southeast Iowa. That race is still too close to call yet, as I think Miller Meeks is up by about 300 votes, but still several votes to be tallied. And then going to southwest Iowa, Congresswoman Axne prevailing over David Young for a 2nd time. And again, really tight margins there, I think about 2 points. So a lot of good competitive races this cycle in Iowa.
It seemed that all eyes were on Iowa, and a lot of resources were spent from the president to the U.S. Senate to the Congress. But also let's shift and talk about state and House, state Senate and state House races. That's really where ABI's PAC. We are a state PAC. That's where you all did a lot of your work and analysis from way back in the early summer, right after the primaries. And there's a lot of money from the outside coming in on those state races too. But what happened in the state Senate? Where are the numbers right now? What's the breakdown? The Republicans currently control the Senate 32-18. So coming into January, what does that look like for the Senate control?
I think you look at the Senate, it's going to remain 32-18. And I think Republicans, a big question going into the night was, could they hold on to the suburbs, particularly Senator Brad Zahn's seat in Urbandale, and then former Senate President Schneider's seat in West Des Moines? Well, they went 1 for 2, and Mayor of Clive, Scott Sarcina, just about won that race, but it just wasn't enough to overcome that big voter registration advantage that Democrats had. And I think, JD, you saw some trends in the blue-collar working class areas for the Senate, which really helped propel a few key folks in southeast Iowa.
Yeah, State Senator Rich Taylor lost his reelection bid, and so that is what allowed the Senate to remain 32-18 by a big Trump surge down in Southeast Iowa. As we had seen in 2016, it repeated itself in 2020.
And Taylor was a Democrat from Fort Madison, is that right?
That's correct.
And that's a district that used to be just solid blue.
No one used to campaign there in try to make that a competitive race. It has completely turned over the last 4 years.
And similarly, the Burlington area, also a Republican is still in control of that, even though that was an open seat with Green. Is that right? Senator
Tom Green retired.
Okay.
So that seat was a race to defend what actually had been a Democratic registration edge Senate district. But that remained with the Republicans after the election.
So IPAC, Friend of Business Candidates, IPAC got involved in a lot of those state Senate seats. What was the result for IPAC on election night for the state Senate?
Very happy to report that 19 of 20 endorsed candidates in the Iowa Senate by IPAC were successful. A great run.
So, and that one seat would have been the Metro seat, right? The one that the 19 or 20.
That is correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I guess like switching to the House, why don't we start with the news of how did IPAC do with those state House seats on election night?
Well,
Nicole, take it, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm really giddy about this. I mean, IPAC was 57 of 59 in the Iowa House, and I think that's about 96% of the races where we endorsed the candidate. The candidate won. It was just astounding. And I think you look at going into the night, Republicans and a lot of analysts thought that the chamber could flip to Democrats. I think a lot of neutral observers stated that as well. And what you saw was just really remarkable. Republicans had a net gain of 6 seats. So going into the 89th General Assembly in January, it's going to be a 59-41 majority for the Republicans, which I don't think anybody saw that coming on election night, anybody who was being objective at least.
Yeah, Iowa was on a list of about 5 states where there was a concerted effort to try to flip control of chambers coordinated at the national level. So unprecedented amount of money was spent in the Iowa House this year. We had several $1 million races, which is very strange for Iowa. And at the end of the night, Iowans decided. It was not decided by the large amount of outside money. Retail politics, meeting voters prevailed over wholesale politics of trying to figure out how to press money into races to get victors. Clearly, Iowans decided.
So you mentioned retail politics. So, I've seen some articles come out. It seems like the campaigns for both parties were just a lot different this year. I know with the pandemic, there were some limitations maybe on what candidates could or couldn't do. What did you see? Was there a difference in the parties as far as how they campaigned, or maybe new methods of campaigning, and did those pan out? I think maybe you were alluding to that a little bit, but were people at the doors this cycle?
It almost broke on party lines. The Republicans tended to keep up their door knocking and canvassing by working with social distancing and masking and doing everything, and asking people if they would like to talk or if they would like to have them move on. Democrats really tried to run a social media campaign and working in groups and recruiting folks to be part of meetings online. I think the proof of which was most effective is in the margin of victory for the House candidates. People in Iowa still like to meet the candidates. They're very well trained in doing that in Iowa, and that's what prevailed.
That's very interesting as we, evolve into a social media nonstop 24/7 news cycle that, as you said, people still want to meet and want to know who's representing them. As we talk about wanting to know who's representing you, that is something that you both spend a ton of time on, and working with the IPAC board and ABI investors about who are the candidates and knowing where they stand on the issues. So as we close out our conversation this morning, as we close out our conversation today, can you tell me, what does this mean for ABI's 2021 priorities? And does this change your approach or what do we have? What does ABI members have to look forward to as we move to 2021?
Well, recall that many of our main priorities were childcare and housing as it goes to workforce development and infrastructure deployment. Those issues don't belong to one party or another. They are bipartisan priorities. I believe that the numbers in the House and the Senate, counting pro-business legislators, we have many pro-business legislators that we'll be able to appeal to advance our priorities and make sure that we are working on the pro-growth, pro-business policies that we can achieve with the setup that we have in the House and the Senate now.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for your time today. I know that's been a long night. Last night, you have a full day, weeks and months ahead of you of getting to know those new faces and starting to continue to advocate for the 2021 policies and priorities. We look forward to seeing all the ABI members at the legislative briefing and reception in person in Des Moines in 2021. So mark your calendars for that. Go to the ABI website and get registered. And if you ever need anything on policy or politics, I hope that you'll contact and reach out to JD and Brad directly. But thank you for your investment in ABI. For our IPAC investors, thank you very much for your continued support, and we look forward to 2021.